Now then, here we are in the workshop again, and as you can see we've got a vacuum cleaner here. It's a Hoover, so I didn't expect a lot of it, but it was intact. I thought, okay, here we go. And this is a bit of a tale of woe, and isn't that typical? So I plugged it in and the motor ran, great, and the rotor went round, even better, and then I inspected it, having switched it off, inspected it further, and the whole of the suction hose was blocked totally. Thought, what? How can that be? So I investigated, and it's a tale of either incredibly poor design, or a designer who thinks he's brilliant and then having forgotten something, and they have to do a bodge, or using parts from another of their range that doesn't really fit and doesn't really work and is fitted in the wrong place. And you combine that with somebody who thinks that big pieces of plastic toy and large boiled sweets and bits of Lego and stuff like that will go up a vacuum cleaner. So we have a design flaw which restricts the flow, and then we have a user who doesn't understand the ins and outs of vacuum cleaners. On top of that, the place where it blocked is, to the average person who doesn't know how to use a screwdriver, it's inaccessible. So you think, what on earth? Here we are, the planner is actually sort of in desperate need, and we've known about it since the 60s, yeah? And Hoover is still churning out this complete rubbish. It sort of works for the first 6 months, and then you've got people who don't maintain them and don't understand, and that finishes the job off. So that's that rant over. So further to that, we've got the second part of this scenario where I tested it before I started work on it, and it ran, and the rotor went round, etc. The brushes ran. So I'm an hour into it and thinking, yeah, I fixed it. You know, you've got to find out how these things come apart, and you investigate. So I'm giving it a road test, and all you get is sort of the sound of brushes arcing. I think, well, this ran, but now it doesn't. So I actually dug into it a couple of days later, had the motor out, and freed the brushes off. So the other part of this scenario is you've got a designer who has designed it in an inefficient way, yeah, or has forgotten about something and they bodged it at the last minute. You've got a user who hasn't got a clue, and then they probably left it outside. So the damp got into the motor and the brushes seized up. So first time I used it, no worries. The second time, it had just taken that little skim off the brushes, and because the brushes were seized, it wasn't making full contact. Anyway, I assume you want to see what I did. So this is an after the fact video. So, press those two buttons down there and this lot comes off. Yeah. Pop that out and there's a filter there. There's all nasty bits of plastic with bits that break. But yeah, this is reminiscent of Dyson, Okay, and in there are 6 screws. If you undo those, this top bit comes off, and then that whole turbo arrangement comes out the bottom. Not that many people will ever investigate that. Which way round does this go? That way. Or is it that way? That looks better. But there are some. There's actually a maintenance sticker, amazing, on the side which tells you which way round it goes. Anyway, let's see how we're doing. This whole pipe was blocked all the way up, and you notice whereas on the Dysons they used to have some sort of arrangement here where it had seals and it all moved and therefore it leaked after a while. Everybody's moved on to that sort of thing. Anyway, to be able to get to the problem part, you've got to undo all this lot. Now that's alright for you and me, but Joe Average will just give up at that point. They'll poke in here and get rid of stuff and poke a hole in the side of this flexible hose. Yeah, but the blockage area is right there. So I'm going to undo those screws and then show you the problem. So I've undone all the screws, and luckily they're all the same size, but they're quite short. So on these ones here and that one, you can't, once they're undone, you can't get them out. Yeah, which is a recipe for losing them. So then you go, how does this come out? What? How? Where? Yeah. I'm trying not to be negative, but I don't think I'm being very successful. And you've got to bear in mind that I've done this before. Right. Okay. And that cable needs to push down there. Okay. When this goes back on, it's even more difficult because this piece here needs to go around there because this piece sticks out beyond that. As you can see, there's this boss here. Anyway, what we need to do is see down in here. So let's just rearrange things. Okay. So this is where the blockage was. Yeah, bits of plastic toy and sweeties and Lego and stuff like that. You see that sharp there, sharp bend. Now this thing here is the valve for either suction from up this pipe here or suction through the rotor. Yeah, so, but it's in a very strange place, you know, to create that real sharp bend. It's a bit weird. It's not what you would call efficient. It might be very cheap to make, yeah, and it will last for long enough, but it's not really. I mean, the Vax is so much better quality than this. The one or two ones that I've repaired, I just go, I quite like the way this is put together, even though there's one or two short-termist things in it, and they really work well. Yeah, so anyway, there you go. So that's the problem. Okay, so that sharp bend is just, especially in this corrugated pipe, it's just set up to block up, isn't it? Yeah, slightest little thing will get in one of the corrugations and then all the muck will start building up around it. That's that bit. Yeah, don't really like this at all. Yeah, and the fact that it's really difficult to get this cover on and off, as I will show you presently, I think. Yes. Okay, where's the tin of screws? Here it is. So that has got to go around there. Let me just show you. There are some tabs there. There's a hook there, okay, which needs to go in there, but this side needs to go around that. So thank you very much. It was not very sensible. And let me just show you, there's this bit here that goes in there. So talk about fiddly. And you've got to bear in mind that I've done this several times. Right, let's get the screws in. Okay, so that's back together. Some of you may have noticed that the suppression capacitor poked out here, so I had to take it off again and fit that back in there, because it just, all that wiring just dangles there. Right, we'll just turn this round, and there's a feature here, hopefully we can see, yeah, which is another filter. That's the output filter from the motor, and it's a bit tricky to refit, because unless you get the filter in exactly the right place, it won't go. There, I think that's it. But of course, on the cleaning instructions, it doesn't mention that filter, and when I took that out, it was totally blocked. Yeah, so the instructions don't talk about it. Duh. Okay, let's have a quick look at how you get to the motor. The first thing you've got to do is you've got to take this top off to be able to take the belt off. This little thing here, let me just tip down. This little thing here adjusts the height of the rollers, and once you've moved the top part, the handle, back to use it, it locks it in place. Okay, but that just lifts out like that. Okay, so that wants to go in the tin. Right, let's turn this over. Then we've got loads of screws. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and one down there somewhere, I think. Anyway, I'll just undo those and then come back to you. Okay, those are undone. Okay, that one, the screw down there is hiding, so you've got to be very careful to make sure you get that, or else you'll be struggling. But luckily it's not a security screw. There you go, that comes off, and then we can remove the belt. Okay, that's that. That seems to spin nicely enough. And this was absolutely filthy, but I've given it a cursory clean. So, continuing on. There are 4 screws, 2 there and 2 under there. And so you undo these 2 and then you move the top arm back so you can get to those other screws from the other side, if that makes any sense. So we'll just undo these 2. And again, they're down in the deep recess, designed to lose them. Okay, so then we press that, and the other two screws are here. That screw there. There's one. Two. You know, you pick these things up and you're on a carpet or something and it goes bouncing off and it's lost. So now the next thing to do, can we see? We can just about. There's these plastic retainers, so you just got to lever them off. And look, there's a tag there, and they go in that way with the groove on the outside. And we just get the other one off. And then that comes out of that sub-assembly and that comes off. Hopefully that wasn't too quick for you. Then the motor is a bit tricky to get out. Now then, this is just an extra bit of footage because I forgot to switch the camera on. This is a different motor, but these connections are the same. There's a little locking tab that you have to press. Now hopefully there it is, and you just press that down, and there, just there, is the little lock. Hopefully that makes sense. And if you don't press it, then you'll never get these off. Okay, now the next thing was that I was talking about, or I'm about to talk about, freeing the brushes off. And what I did was I loosened that screw and eased this off like that. And then with the brush seized, you can then put the screwdriver between the commutator and the brush and just ease it backwards and forwards. Yeah. And the brush spring is below there. On those other ones there are two tabs, but this one you bend this tab up and that releases the spring and the brush. I'm not going to do that because I don't fancy trying to ease that back in. But hopefully this sort of catches up with where I missed. Now then, just here there's that, which is a rubber seal. That lines up with there, so the suction goes in there and it comes out here. And then just there, that's the output filter. So we just pop this back together. I forgot to tell you about this rubber bush. So that goes in there, and then that centralizes that in that housing. Okay, there we go, wiggle wiggle. So not only does it hold this in that bush, that housing there, but it gives a bit of extra end pressure onto the the fan connection. So now we can just pop this back on. Better just put that on there. Okay, let's give it a road test. Well, that doesn't seem too bad. It's not as good as a Vax machine. Maybe it costs less, something like that. But as you've seen, there's one or two design flaws, and then we've had a whole series of woes. Yeah, one built on the next. Anyway, that's the end of that. Catch up with you soon.